Hello guys and welcome to another video. My name's Mark, I'm an entrepreneur and property investor. In today's video, we're talking about when COVID meets HMOs and how that equals less tax. And I'll give you a clue right now, it didn't go very well for me. And it's all come about because I'm just doing my tax return at the moment, and it's actually something I quite enjoy doing. I know that's a bit geeky, I know it's a bit nerdy, but I quite enjoy going through all the figures, sanity checking my income, sanity checking my expenses, and coming out with the net figure. But this time around, I was really counting the effects of COVID on my HMO portfolio as well as my single lets. And I'll give you a quick overview because I own some properties in my personal name, and these are the ones that we're referring to today. The ones in my personal name, the single lets completely unaffected. So I'm not going to run through those with you, but I've got 3 HMOs in our personal name, and those 3 have definitely been affected. So I'm going to run through all of those with you. Completely honest, completely transparent figures. As I said, these are from my tax return. Nick, you've had a look at it?
Yeah.
It's all real, isn't it?
Yeah.
Exactly. So this is completely honest and open with you guys. And if you like that level of transparency, give this video a big like. Remember, there's no course to sell. I'm not doing this for any other reason other than to give the information to you guys. And on top of that, if you haven't already subscribed, why not consider subscribing? So let's look at HMOs first of all and what effect COVID had on HMOs. Now for me, there's 3 main areas that I have HMOs. Number 1 is in Oxfordshire, in a little town called Dividend, which is just outside of Oxford. And that serves a science and skills technology council base called Rutherford Appleton Laboratories in the Diamond Light Source. Now they have an awful lot, about 20,000 people who work there, and they're generally international scientists that come into the country and they do contracts where they're going to run experiments maybe for 6, 12, 24 months, something like that. And a lot of my HMO rooms, in fact all of my HMO rooms, were rented out prior to the pandemic to international scientists, and they were running very, very well. Now you can imagine what happened with COVID, and we'll go through that in a minute. The other 2 areas I have is Northamptonshire, where I've got it in 3 or 4 towns. So I've got Corby, Kettering, Wellingborough. Now again, those towns aren't necessarily reliant on one employer or one type of tenant, and they fared much better, and there's a lesson in there, I think. The 3rd area I have is Sheffield, which is a big university city. They've got 2 big universities, Sheffield Hallam and Sheffield City, and between the 2 of them there's I think about 70,000 students, so a huge university city. The whole city's got about 1 million people living there, and we don't actually rent out to students, but again there was a big knock-on effect for the students not being in the city to how those HMOs went. So let's go into the figures and let me show you how I managed to make, what was the total, Nick, in the end? Last year I think it was £2,000. Absolutely fantastic from properties that were making me a significant amount more the years before. So let's look at the properties in sequence. Number 1, we've got Didcot 1. Now this property, I'd actually only just got it fully rented out pre to the pandemic in about November. So I've had to put a PR here, which stands for pro rata. That was on target to make me £22,000 in its first year, and that's a 6-bedroom HMO that's worth about £500,000. Let's put that down actually. D1 is worth £500,000, and so that's 500k. So that was on target to make me about 22k. Unfortunately, on my 2020 to 2021 tax return, it did minus £3,000. There was 3 months where I only had 1 tenant, and there was a significant period where we tried to refill the rooms and we had to just keep dropping our prices. We had to start targeting a different type of tenant. We went from targeting top-end scientists who had a budget to targeting a different type of tenant, blue-collar workers for example, who didn't have the same budget. So the rents in that house went from an average, I think, of $650 down to an average of $500. So a significant reduction, and we had a lot of voids. It would be very wrong for me to illustrate any other picture to you other than that house suffered badly through the pandemic. Today it's actually full. It's now rented out for about $3,600 a month, but at its peak it was $4,200. The scientists are coming back. I'm confident when we look at this in a year's time, the tax return is going to look very, very different. Now look at Didcot 2. Now I've had this property since 2018, and it's generated between £14,000 and £18,000 a year every year. However, during the pandemic, it's a 5-bedroom HMO, only £2,000 profit from 2020 to 2021. Terrible result. And for exactly the same reasons as the first one, there's no point in me going over it again. All the tenants left, all the scientists left, and we had to re-rent all the rooms. That said, it was a slightly cheaper property, slightly less mortgage payments, slightly less everything else. So actually we managed to squeeze a profit of £2,000. Sheffield 1, the previous year, £9,000 profit, really good. But this year, only £3,000 profit. That's 2/3 down. down. It fared a little bit better than the Didcot ones. You know, it wasn't full of international people who all left straight away. Now, the big issue with that was that it's a student city, and with all the students not being in the city, there was an absolute abundance of rooms available, and there was a huge oversupply at the same time that there was a reduction in demand. So we ended up actually having a lot of voids, and we only managed to squeeze £3,000 worth of profit. Now, you might be looking at this going, Mark, that's an absolutely terrible result. And to be fair, from an income perspective, it really is, but that's not the whole picture with property, and you know it's not the whole picture. So I want to show you why I'm not feeling too glum about this. Because essentially, Didcot 2 was worth 350,000, and Sheffield 1 was worth about 100,000, and all of these properties have grown in value significantly. Now, if we just took the average and said that that's about £1 million worth of property, we said they grew by about 10%, then we would be looking at about 100k of capital appreciation on those properties alone, and they washed their face. So during the worst pandemic, the worst conditions possible, the property portfolio, well, this part of it, washed its face, which is actually the worst performing part of it, washed its face and made 100k in capital appreciation. Now, I can't think that that's that bad an outcome. But the reality is this 100k isn't 100k, it's much more. So Sheffield has massively outperformed in terms of capital appreciation. That's added about 40k. This house is probably worth now 525, something like that, so that's 25k. And this property here is somewhere added about 75k, so we're probably about 140k up. It's a huge difference. The property at the top end hasn't risen as much as the others, but this one definitely 425. There was one on the same road recently been sold for 425, and this Sheffield one's worth 140 all day, every day. So this is a fantastic outcome. Let's take the average and say 100k, but the reality is probably more like 140k of capital appreciation. And I guess the question is, would I swap the best part of 50 grand's worth of income for 100k of capital appreciation income, which I can refinance and take 75k out completely tax-free? And the answer, of course, would be, yeah, of course I would. This is a much better source of income than this income over here, because this I have to pay tax on, and this I can refinance out and I don't have to pay tax on. So guys, the full picture for me is actually not as bad as I might have made out in the beginning of this video. The reality is my income has taken a massive hit. There's no two ways about it. Anyone who thought that shared accommodation during a global pandemic would do well was delusional. I knew it would be hammered, and it was. But that is only part of the story, and you cannot forget the capital appreciation side. You must remember that you've made this money over here. Otherwise, you'd be feeling very, very depressed, when you should, and I am feeling really happy with the end result for this year. So guys, let me know in the comments your experience of the pandemic. How's it affected your investments? I'd love to know. I'll answer absolutely every single one. I hope you've enjoyed this level of transparency, and I will see you next time.